welcome to Behind the Music for Daily Hope. I'm Kristin, Holton, Prouty, back again with you this week as we wrap up our series of Ephesians that we've called Immeasurably More. We're now nearing the end of chapter 6. We're learning about the armor of God. It's been such a great series. We've had so many great things to learn about, and this is just a strong way for us to finish. Now, the Apostle Paul begins verse 10 by saying, "Finally, be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power." Apostle Paul then goes on to use the word stand 4 times in the next 4 verses, which is kind of cool, I think. He's not telling us to just be passive Christians and sit back in our chairs. No, stand up, stand and do these different things, girding ourselves with the armor of God. So it's a very strong, kind of powerful way to end our study here. Now, there's a hymn in our hymnal that I'm sure you've heard called Stand Up for Jesus. Now, I know every now and then people might raise an eyebrow or be like, oh, that's kind of militaristic. We don't really like to talk about that too much. We're kind of, happy Christians now. But this week, as we're talking about the armor of God, I thought it was appropriate that we should sing this hymn. And it's interesting, I think, as you learn about the story, you'll realize it's not so much about fighting. We are fighting against powers that aren't flesh and blood, but that also is just about reminding us of the strength that we have through Christ. So I'm going to go ahead and read you the 3rd stanza of this hymn. Stand up for Jesus. Stand in his strength alone. The arm of flesh will fail you. You dare not trust your own. Put on the gospel armor. Each piece put on with prayer. Where duty calls or danger, be never wanting there. Did you notice that phrase, the arm of flesh will fail you? This poem was actually inspired by someone who attended the funeral for a pastor. There was a pastor in Philadelphia in the mid-1800s, around 1858 or so. He'd been preaching for many years, and he had quite a following. He was a strong, powerful preacher. He was preaching against slavery. He really had a burden to reach men and try and get fathers and husbands and men to follow Christ. And so he was going to YMCAs and all over and started a congregation, and he even had a rally that had over 5,000 men at it. And in one day, over 1,000 came to Christ. So Dudley Ting, he was making a huge impact in Philadelphia in the lives of the men there. And 2 weeks after that rally, he was out in the country. He got caught in a corn thrasher, pulled his arm in, ripped it off right here, an artery. They weren't able to repair it. So as he was bleeding out and dying, his older father was there with him, and he turned to his dad and he said, "Stand up for Jesus, Father, and tell my brethren of the ministry to stand up for Jesus." And so his father shared those words at the funeral of his son, how his last words had been, "Stand up for Jesus." Now, another pastor that was there heard those and was just so moved that he went on to write the poem that we now know as Stand Up for Jesus. So he tied it in with the arm of flesh failing us. He was inspired by Ephesians 6 to write this text with the armor of God. And just know that this life here isn't all that matters, but it does matter. And so this week we're going to sing this song, and I want you to think about what it means to be part of God's army and fighting against not just flesh and blood, but powers even beyond that we can comprehend. But the good news is God is able to do immeasurably more than we can ask or imagine, and that's a promise that we can claim. I'll be back with you again next week. We have a new exciting series that we're going to be beginning. If you don't follow us already, we're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. Visit us on our website. We just want you to be involved in many ways as possible. It's always great to be with you, and I hope you enjoy this song, Stand Up for Jesus.